Ladies and gentlemen, Bonham, ladies and gentlemen, family, friends, thank you very much for coming in such numbers. We're delighted to see so many people here tonight. For a local Brighton boy to be involved in this project, which is so aspirational, so exciting, is a huge privilege. We think we can make a huge difference to the community, the direction of travel for the community, and it's also an awesome responsibility. So thank you again. What is tonight about? The main thing is we are involved in a process which will end up with an application to develop new church roads. So this is very much part of a consultation process. So we really want to hear your views. There'll be a chance for questions and answers later on this evening, and there's also a survey for you to fill in. So please do fill in the survey. It gives you an opportunity to say what you would like to see on the site. The second thing that we're trying to do tonight is give you a real sense of what we're intending to put on the site. It's been 2 years, really, since this started, and we've been through several iterations of what this might look like. And we feel now we have something which is incredibly exciting, which we want to share with you, and hopefully get your support, and your involvement will only make it better. So we want to talk to you about the development, and we also want to try and use this as a catalyst to unify this community. We're going to talk a lot about the Orthodox synagogues. We would like to see the Orthodox synagogues come together. We'd also like to see the New Church Road site, which is a huge site and is wonderfully located as a center, a hub for Jewish life in the city, irrespective of where you are on the religious spectrum, and even if you're unaffiliated. So this is really about unifying the community now. So speakers, we have some great speakers tonight. I'm going to invite Tony up to come speak a little in a few minutes' time. Tony is the chairman of Bloom Foundation, amongst many hats that he wears, and he is very passionate about this project. I'll talk more about him in a second. We also have David Seidel, who's the chairman of Brighton Hove Hebrew Congregation, who we've been working very closely with over the last couple of years. And David's been incredibly helpful as we've tried to bring this concept to reality. I'm going to talk later about what we're trying to put on the site and why we want the community to come together. And then the architects, Lapp and John from Morgan Kahn, which is a local architect firm here, one of the leading firms in Sussex. And then Teva, who was the rabbi who designed Highgate Shul, who's responsible for looking at the design of the shul on our new complex, is going to speak as well. And I must just take the opportunity to say what an incredible team we have assembled. I'm so proud to be involved with all of them, not just the architects, also the project managers. James from the project management team has done an enormous amount of work to put this evening together. So thank you to all the team that are involved in this as well. Thank you also to Roger for allowing us to use Raleigh Hall and for being so cooperative. And then finally, certainly not least, the Chief Rabbi is here, and I'm so delighted that over the course of the last year he's been so helpful, and his wisdom has helped shape this project. And he's going to talk about his passion for provincial communities and how we can make the most of this opportunity. So it gives me enormous pleasure to ask Tony to come up. Tony's going to speak about why Bloom Foundation is involved. As you know, Brighton Hove Albion Football Club got 3 points on Saturday. So if it helps going forward, we could do this every week, maybe, I don't know. But anyway, Tony, please come up to the stage.
Thank you, Mark. Good evening, everyone. And in fact, Mark is correct. If we could get 3 points every week, I'll come 3 times a day here. Where we are today in the Jewish community in Brighton and Hove is very similar to the situation of Brighton and Hove Albion Football Club about 30 years ago. Unfortunately, back then, our old disgraceful owners of the football club ran the club into the ground, and eventually in 97, or just before that, sold the old Goldstone ground for development, leaving the club homeless. As I'm sure most of you know, we had 2 years, 2 hours away in Kent, 12 years playing at the Withdean Stadium, an old athletics track I used to run around when I was at school. And we lost a generation of young fans. Unfortunately, what's happening, the Jewish community in Brighton over the last 30, 35 years, ever since I was growing up here in the 1970s, is the membership of the synagogues in Brighton and Hove and the Jewish communal life generally has gone down and down. And if you look at the memberships of the Orthodox synagogues of Holland Road and New Church Road over the last 20 or 30 years, they go down every year and the average age goes up and up. And when Mark and I found out about 2 years ago that New Church Road, with the financial strains they were under, were in the process of selling 2/3 of the New Church Road site to developers, it hurt, because Mark and I both could see this could be the beginning of the end of the Orthodox Jewish community as we know it, and even the Jewish community broadly in this city. You can't keep selling the family silver and hope to survive, and not just survive, but even get an upturn and get some vitality into the community. So Mark and I spoke. We started speaking with the board of New Church Road, and thank you very much to the whole board of New Church Road and David Seidel in particular, the chairman, about what we could do, how we could make a difference to revive the community that we love. And the good news is we managed to stop the 2/3 of the site being sold, and what you're going to see today is the reality of what we have agreed, whereby with the new development, all the profits will stay within the community. And what we have a much bigger site, and not only do we have a new, beautiful Orthodox synagogue being built, but we are also going to build, amongst other assets, which you'll hear about later, is a Jewish community centre for all. And that for all is really important, because there's two main things that we are going to create. There's one synagogue, and I would very much like there to be one Orthodox synagogue in the community. There is absolutely not enough members, congregation for two, let alone the running costs. One beautiful Orthodox synagogue, and alongside that, a Jewish community centre for all, and for all means all of those affiliated Orthodox and Reform, Progressive, and all those Jews in our city non-affiliated. As well as that, as part of the project which the Bloom Foundation is underwriting, which brings financial stability to the whole project, will also include an upgrade of Bear Road Cemetery. What we are looking to do, what this is all about, is that we're going to get a revitalised Jewish community in Brighton and Hove. It's not going to be easy, it won't happen overnight, but the starting point is to have the asset that we are building, and then it's all about people. It's all of you and all the new people, and particularly the younger people, the younger families, that we can bring to this wonderful city of Brighton and Hove. And they will come to Brighton and Hove because it's one of the best places in England to live. In a recent survey of happiness in this country, it came out as one of the leading cities to live in. It's very close, as we all know, to London. Cost of living is reasonable compared to northwest London. And so that is what we're looking to do. And it's not just for the next 5 or 10 years, it's for the next 50 and the next 100 years. So just to conclude, what we are going to do, we're proudly going to build something for all of the community, which will mean there will be Jewish continuity, a a significant, hopefully Jewish community for many, many years to come. And there will be financial stability within the New Church Road Synagogue, and the scheme, as Mark will go through shortly, will bring various income streams as well. So I'd like to thank you all for coming. Enjoy the evening, and I hope the attendance we get today will be a sign of things to come with our new development coming up. Thank you.
It now gives me, I don't know why I came up on the stage to say it, it gives me a huge pleasure to welcome David Seidel to talk as well.
Hello, everyone, friends, and ladies and gentlemen I haven't met yet. Tony, thank you very much for your words, and I would like to wish you a mazel tov on the weekend results as well. I am supposed to be talking about the aims of the Brighton and Hove Hebrew congregation, and they're very simple. I came into the chairmanship 6 years ago, not because I wanted it, but because my predecessor needed someone to fill in for him while he was ill. The whole idea of what we've been working on over the past 6 years is, as Tony said, things haven't been working. Membership going down, facilities in disrepair, and at that point it became essential to start thinking about shuffling the deck. And shuffling the deck sounds kind of innocuous, but when you're about to see with the plans, it is major. And I think that what's major is really what's needed here to make a huge difference in the way that we live our lives in this city. And that is the perspective and the aims of what BHHC is all about at this stage. But what I really wanted to say more than anything else is how much we have enjoyed working with the Bloom Foundation, with Mark and Tony behind him, and with all of the professionals that have been involved, whether it's the project managers, the cost consultants, the architects in particular. Everybody has been incredibly respectful about what our needs are and what we can do to build a terrific center. And I think what we have, or what we have on show today will just show how much we have been thinking both inside the box and outside the box. And I really have to say that I really do want to thank the Bloom Foundation for everything that they have done. This project wouldn't have taken off without them, and with the people that have been involved, and with the people that we've been introduced to, whether it's the people from Work Avenue or the other people at the Bloom Foundation, like Sharon and a few others that have been there, and everybody has been very fixed on what is the ultimate prize, and the ultimate prize is to make life for Jews in Brighton and Hove a lot better. And I hope you will agree with me that when you see what the plans are and what they involve, they will see just how much we are taking those steps to do that, and that we are taking those steps together. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. So my presentation is in two parts. The first is to just give you a sense of the pressures, because I don't think everyone's aware of some of the data points which just show how much pressure there is on the community. And then talk about options, because we've seen in other communities what can be done. And then I'm going to talk about what's on the site. So this is the first slide. This is a census, a snapshot, which was done in 2014 and is over the date range 2001 to 2011. What it shows is that top blue line Brighton community grew. This is not the Jewish community, the overall community grew by about 10% over that period. Brighton, as Tony said, is a very attractive place to live. The second line, the brown line, which is the biggest religious community in the Brighton and Hove area, the Christian community, that declined by about 20%. And that gives you a sense, I think, of the pressures in general for religious affiliation, not just Jewish, but religious. And one of the things that is sort of coming out when you see communities which are more successful is that it's not so much that people lack religion, they don't. They're not attracted necessarily, certainly the younger community, to just coming to a shul. Shuls need to reinvent themselves. They need to have community assets around the main shul, which can be a magnet for across the age range and across different people's different needs in life to be able to be part of a community. So what we're trying to create with this site is very much aimed at trying to create those assets to bring out the natural religious affiliation which exists. Just looking at the Jewish numbers in a little more detail. So unfortunately, the Jewish religion was the worst of all the religions. It declined by about 21% between 2001 and 2011, which is the brown line. I picked the Muslim population because it was a similar size at the start in 2001. It's now more, or in 2011, it was more than double the size of the Jewish community. Our sense is that if you were able to map out this line to 2017, it wouldn't be linear, it would be exponential, because you reach a point where the aging of a population is such that you just don't have birth rates coming through to replace. And by the same token, if you have a younger population, which the Muslim community does, your birth rates go up and you have a higher number. So this is really, to me, a depressing chart, because it shows that we are, this is the final chance. As far as I'm concerned, this is the final chance for the community. I think if New Church Road had sold the site to developers, which they had to try and do something because they were losing so much money, it really would have been the end of the road. So we now have an opportunity to do something very special to try and reverse that. Incidentally, the bottom line there, which is the Orthodox community, has declined at a sharper rate, unfortunately, than the Jewish community. And I think wherever you are across the religious spectrum, there's an acknowledgement that roots for Judaism are deep within an Orthodox community. And I think ultimately, unless you have a strong Orthodox community, there won't be a community. So that's very much, again, part of our kind of philosophy in looking at this scheme, is to try and create a beautiful Orthodox shul at the center of our site. So just to go into the details a little bit more, numbers, I'll come to numbers in a second. They have declined significantly for the population. The average age of a member of New Church Road is 72. The average age of a member at Holland Road is older. I don't know what the number is, but I know it's older. Financials. For the last 3 years, according to Companies House, Holland Road has lost money. New Church Road last year lost over £50,000. This is not sustainable. Something needs to change the dynamic and to change the direction of travel. And I'm talking about the Orthodox communities. I also know from my conversations with Michael Harris, who I'm quite close to, that Reform Shul has also seen pressures, and Reform Shul is also engaged in its own redevelopment. So again, this is a chance, because of the size of the New Church Road site, to bring people together, to bring the whole community together, and whether it's Reform or Progressive, there's a chance to really embrace this scheme. I just wanted to read you this quote. For some years, Brighton and Hove Hebrew Congregation and the Hove Hebrew Congregation, the two Orthodox Jewish congregations in the Brighton and Hove area, have discussed the possibility of merger into one community. The reasons for this are well known: falling membership due to aging, integration, lack of religious commitment, rising costs, and pessimism of the future prospects of Orthodox Jewry. The town has 3 synagogues, sparsely populated for all but a few days of the year. That was written in 1995, 22 years ago. In 1995, we estimate that the combined number of Orthodox members was 1,400. It's now less than 400. So it is really a grave situation. So our message, as Tony said, to Holland Road is please come and join and be part of this. Is a chance now to do what should have been done 40, 50, 60 years ago, and that is to merge into one community. According to the Jewish policy research, the average size of an Orthodox community, a mainstream Orthodox community in this country, is 247 families. If you put Holland Road and Brighton Hove Hebrew Congregation together, you're about that level. So that is about the level you need in order to have a secure minyan, to be able to provide children's services and other basics. So it makes sense purely from that perspective. A lot of people say, well, why don't you keep Holland Road as a shul? It's a beautiful shul, and then have communal assets on New Church Road. The problem is, Holland Road's been a beautiful shul for 40, 60 years, and it hasn't helped. There has to be a change in dynamic. The situation is so serious that unless the answer to that situation is sufficiently radical, there isn't going to be any change. Having a shul in the center of a communal site is the one opportunity we believe to really create some sort of renaissance in this community. I also wanted to just mention, I don't know if you saw last week, but there was another survey, the British Social Attitude Survey, which talked about the fall in religious affiliation in this country. And Rabbi Sachs said something very interesting. He said, all of this suggests that religious faith is falling fast, but that is the wrong conclusion. There is a difference between faith and religious affiliation. Traditional services may lack the pace and pulse of the new social media, but that does not mean that they have nothing to offer. To the contrary, we are finding more young people coming to synagogue to find community, a home for their ideals, and respite from the relentless pressure of being online. It's difficult, I think, for young people in this day and age to find community because everyone's so fixated on a screen. So if we can put the right facilities in place, we believe we have a chance. We also have had a chance during this, the last couple of years of trying to research what should go onto the site to talk to various other communities across the UK. One of them we spoke to was Leeds, and Susie Gordon, who's the Executive Director of Leeds Rep Council, said the idea is that the shul becomes the center point of our community rather than on the edge, because I feel very strongly that without a shul, we won't have a community because people don't stay or move to a Jewish community if there isn't one, if there isn't a shul, even if they don't attend. I spoke to Susie earlier this week, and she said that there is now a kosher bakery on the shul site, and there's a Moishe house where students can come and stay, and in return for staying and getting free or low-cost accommodation, they then teach the younger members of the community. So again, it's very much along the same thinking as us. Put accommodation on the site, put facilities on the site, and then you have a chance of changing things. Also spoke to Jeff Clements, who is part of the Birmingham Central Synagogue. He was desperately disappointed when Singers, which is the other Orthodox shul nearby, refused by one, or decided by one vote, they needed a 75% majority, by one vote that his Singers decided not to merge, and he was devastated by that. Nevertheless, they have taken up their own redevelopment, and they have created a deli and a community center on the same site in a new redeveloped modern shul building at Central Synagogue. He said a few things. He said, communities are about people, not buildings. I think that's the most important thing to remember. Changing needs of the community makes uses of shul buildings very different in 2015 when they did their redevelopment from the past. Update the way your shul is governed to focus on a community center, not just a shul. Regeneration or the last person remaining, turn the lights out. So, if there is going to be a merger, and people think we're nuts to think that there could be a chance of it because there's been so many lost opportunities over the years, there has to be compromise on all sides. Now, obviously, if Holland Road were to move to New Church Road, they would be making the big sacrifice, the big compromise. But New Church Road is also willing to compromise in a number of areas. So, even though Holland Road has about 40% of the members, Tony and I went to present to Holland Road board a couple of times earlier this year, and we said to them that there is a willingness for New Church Road to give Holland Road an equal number of board seats on the Shul board. Also, there's a willingness to offer the chairmanship to Stanley Cohen, the chairman of Holland Road. Stanley has done a great job of administrating Holland Road, and we think he would do a great job. And we, again, as a gesture to show the compromise on New Church Road side, they're willing to give him the chairmanship, which I think is a big gesture. And then during the construction phase, both communities would pray at Holland Road, and Holland Road is a beautiful site, so it would be an incredible swan song, to quote the chief rabbi, for that synagogue. If you're Holland Road at the moment, in my opinion, and people may differ, there are really two choices. One is you can stay where you are, and inevitably with the aging of the congregation and the current trends, in a few years' time, there won't be a minyan, and the shul, beautiful as it is, will be there and it will be empty. And unfortunately, over time, as we've seen with Middle Street, it becomes a burden, a liability on the community, because it falls into a state of disrepair. That's one option. The other option is to come now and engage with New Church Road and take the artifacts, the key items from Holland Road, which is really what it is, because what we're all about is trying to preserve memories, our connections with the previous generation. We can take those things, whether it's the Torah scrolls or the Aron Kodesh, the Bimah, the plaques, the photos, all of it we can take and bring to the new site. We can effectively move Holland Road, which is a beautiful shul, and put it on the best site for the Jewish community for the future. To my mind, it's a no-brainer. I mean, if you're going to go down the first route, there's not a lot to say, really. So this is what it would look like. This is not Julian's company, by the way, although it says Wolf. Perhaps we wouldn't go quite that far, but it gives you a sense of what can be done. This is perhaps more what we will take.
The museum and the synagogue are in the heart of Jerusalem. It is actually become the heart of the community, the Italian Jewish community in Jerusalem. In their imagination, they were actually, when they entered to this synagogue, they felt like this is Italy. They got back to their roots, to the place they used to be in Italy, and they entered this synagogue as Italian Jews.
The Italian synagogues in the period of the Baroque and later on in the Rococo were done by artists and Hebenists non-Jewish. The Jewish couldn't be carpenters, they couldn't create elements like we see here around, and they have to receive the permit of a non-Jewish artist. Last time that Jewish people used this synagogue, it was in the First World War when the Austro-Hungarian army conquered Italy. A Jewish chaplain searched a synagogue to pray in. Someone remembered that the old lady have a great key to enter a building that used to be a synagogue. The chaplain, he was amazed by the beauty of the space, and from that day on, the synagogue was closed and not reopened. I remember very well when the synagogue was opened here in 1952. I saw a very old Ashkenazi rabbi that was crying in the entrance, and I asked the president of the synagogue, who is crying there? And he said, oh, this is Rabbi Aaron Dishon, and he was the chaplain in the Austrian army, and he is the first time that he sees again the synagogue in Eretz Israel.
In this synagogue, actually, you can feel when you enter the synagogue, you can feel the life and the vibes of this community, which is still alive. Almost here, the holiness of this place and the antiquity of this ark.
Okay, so that's what we would like to do. We would like to keep Holland Road alive in a new site. Okay, so I'd like to switch now and talk a little bit about what we're planning to deliver on the New Church Road site when we bring this development to fruition. And just to kind of give you a bit of forewarning, it's still a work in progress. We have had one informal meeting with the council, which went very well. They're very supportive of the usages we have for the site, but we haven't yet gone into details of heights and so on, which will inevitably mean that things have to change. But this is part of that consultation, as I said earlier, so we're hoping to solicit your views. So what did we try and do? We really wanted to take a step back and ask the question, what is it that would revitalize the Jewish community in Brighton and Hove? And so this is what we want to deliver. We want to build a set of assets which will appeal to people across the age range and the religious spectrum. At the center, in order to provide roots for this community, we want to build a beautiful and inspiring Orthodox shul, and it will literally be at the center, and it will be, you'll see when the architects present the plans, it will be very, very inspiring. We then want to build around the shul community assets which will allow people to keep kosher. So we want to have a kosher cafe so people can socialize and come and have either a kosher meat meal or a kosher milk meal. We also want to give people the opportunity to buy kosher food, kosher deli, kosher butcher, so they can keep kosher and have a nice Shabbat. We also want to address the issue of Jewish education, because I think for a lot of young families, one of the big issues they have when they move to a provincial community is the lack of Jewish education. Now, we don't believe at the moment there's enough demand to have a Jewish free school. I mean, I hope I'm wrong, but we have some ideas, some practical suggestions, which will be a stepping stone so that in the future, if we start to regenerate the community, we can then apply to try and build a Jewish free school. And then finally, and also we want to provide we want to provide cultural and communal programs. We want to give people a chance to congregate and be together and get that sort of joy of being part of a community by putting on events, and I'll talk more about that. And then finally, we want to provide long-term financial stability for the Brighton Hove Hebrew congregation, which will come because there will be a number of non-membership related income streams which we are working on, which we believe will stand the community in good stead for decades and maybe centuries to come. So the proposed facilities. So I've alluded a little bit to them. What I wanted to do was just give you a sense of the fact that we need to be efficient with the space. We need to cater for what is quite a small congregation at the moment. So we need to build a shul which feels intimate when there's 30 to 50 people. At the same time, it needs to be expandable to maybe 300 people for high holidays and if we become successful in the future. And the architects will talk about how we're building a shul which is flexible in that way. The shul on the ground floor, which you'll see in a second, is next to the function hall and next to the cafe. So all of those three spaces are intertwined. So the shul can be made bigger to the cost of the function hall. The shul can be made smaller, and the function hall and the cafe together can be enlarged. So we can have a simcha, maybe 200 people. We're not sure exactly the numbers yet. But it's very, very clever the way it's used. The cafe gets used as a retail space for the kosher butcher, the kosher deli as well. So we've got to be very smart about the way we use this thing. Similarly, on the first floor level, we have a concept called Work Avenue, which I'm going to talk about in a second. I'm delighted that Debbie Sheldon, who's the CEO of Work Avenue, has come down from London to be with us tonight, and she's going to help answer questions that you might have on that scheme a bit later. And I know that we're going to work very effectively with Work Avenue long into the future, so that's very exciting. And similarly with the classrooms which we're building, which I'll talk about more in a second, and the nursery, there are ways in which we need to make those classroom spaces multifunctional. So the classrooms, first of all. On the first floor, we're going to build maybe 3, 4, 5 classrooms, which St. Christopher's desperately needs. Why? It's a very symbiotic relationship. They need the space daytime during the week. We need the space in evenings to host speaker meetings, and at the weekends for children's services and so on. So the timings work very, very well. It can be a very lucrative income stream if we can make the commercials right. And we'll only do it if we can make the commercials right. But it can be a lucrative income stream for the community. And the headmaster, who was a teacher of mine at Brighton College many years ago, we've been talking a great deal, and he's very favorably disposed to us. And he said that any Jewish pupils at St. Christopher's can attend a Jewish education lesson on our site before school and after school. And any Jewish pupil who wants to do Hebrew instead of doing, say, Spanish can do that as well on our site. We're going to use that as a foundation, and we're going to invite schools in the area, state and private schools, that if they want their pupils also to be part of this, they can come along and they can partake in lessons. Obviously, the logistics of getting pupils from our site to their school on time will be challenging, but we believe we can surmount them. But what it does is it says to a young Jewish family that if they so minded, they can find a way of giving their children a Jewish and a Hebrew education, which can stand them in good stead for their primary school ages. I mentioned before that don't necessarily think there's enough demand at the moment to have a Jewish free school in Brighton. I hope I'm wrong. But this data point I think is interesting. This is again from the Jewish Policy Research, which talks about the growth and ongoing growth of Jewish education, particularly primary school education across the UK. But there is a different story. In London, both the Haredi and the mainstream population are seeing enormous growth in Jewish school attendance. In the provinces, however, that's not the case. In fact, Jewish school attendance has declined. It's not declined because parents are not interested in sending their kids to school. It's declined because there aren't so many parents of young families in provincial communities, because those provincial communities are dying. So we believe you have to do one thing at a time. The first thing is get the infrastructure right to allow people to lead a kosher life down here and have a stepping stone. And then, please God, in a few years' time, if it's successful, we can then think about a Jewish free school at that point. Work Avenue. So, Work Avenue, which is like a WeWork facility, for some of you may know that company, is a charity. It's based in Finchley, and it offers expertise and facilities for people who are either looking for work or looking to launch a business. So you can go along to Work Avenue, and you can either use one of their hot desks, or you can use one of their small offices. You can use their meeting rooms. They have printing facilities. They have a great broadband connection, so you can set up your PC, etc., etc. And they have a team on site that will provide advice about how to lay out your CV, interview skills, and so on. And most importantly, there's a fantastic networking opportunity. They get around 100 people a day through their door, and those people are often in similar industries, and they help each other. And people who are maybe retired will come back and will give a presentation about, their careers, which can, again, just that extra bit of help can make the difference between getting a job and not getting a job. So we're really excited to have the opportunity to work with Work Avenue. And the person who runs that for this community would be trained up by Work Avenue. We'd have ongoing access to the team in London via Skype and for visits as well. And it really could be the thing which attracts adults to the site day in, day out. Our thinking is that if you've got a cafe and you have the Work Avenue space, there'll be a magnet to bring Jewish people to this site, and it'll become a live site, not 24/7, but day in, day out. And then JW3. So Raymond Simonson is the CEO of JW3. He was going to be here tonight. Unfortunately, his wife is unwell, so he had to pull out. He has said, however, that once we've established a team that will come from across the community, from all parts of the religious spectrum and some non-affiliated people, that will oversee events and so on that we're going to host on site. Once we have that team, he's very happy to come down with some of his people to give the benefit of his experience. And it is a wealth of experience. JW3 has about 170 events a week on its site, and has about 4,000 people come through its door every week. So it's a phenomenal success story for the Jewish community. What we believe we can do, one very, very simple thing, is we can stream their events. So whenever they have a speaker, and they've had some unbelievable speakers like J.K. Rowling, David Miliband, and so on, we can stream those onto a screen, which will project in the social hall at the new site. So that's an easy one. And then people who are speaking, they'll be invited to come down to Brighton as well. So there's many ways that we believe we can work with JW3, and we can learn a tremendous amount from them. They have so many education evenings, so many speakers, cooking lessons. They use the site to its maximum, and that's what we would like to do. So, this is the big point. The whole will be more than the sum of the parts. We'll have a community on site. There'll be a residential block. We don't know how many people there'll be, but please God, a lot of the people who own flats on site will be Jewish people. So they will be there day in, day out, and they will use the facilities. Equally, when people want to drop off their kids at the Jewish nursery, they'll stay for coffee. Maybe they'll go and use Work Avenue. Maybe they'll stay later and visit, listen to the speaker meeting that's happening that night. Or on a Thursday, maybe they'll go shopping at the deli and the butcher, so they have kosher food for the weekend. And all the time, they'll be using the site. Maybe they'll decide, you know what, we'll Daven Maariv, Mincha Maariv. Maybe we'll come early after we've dropped the kids off at St. Christopher's for their lesson, and we'll go and do Maariv. So the familiarity with the site grows. Kids that maybe don't go to shul start to use the site all the time. Maybe they come to shul. We have a very inspirational Rabbanim across this community. They will, please God, come together on the site, and then, their inspiration plus the facilities can engender a far more dynamic community here. So please support this scheme. Please fill in the survey, that's the easy part. But please encourage institutions that you commune with all the time to come on board and be a part of this. Holland Road, I've talked about a lot, but it's up to the congregation. We respect the board, but it's really for the congregation to decide whether you want to be part of this going forward. We believe it's a unique opportunity, so please do come on board. This opportunity will not come again. Thank you. Now, it's my huge pleasure to welcome to the stage our architects. John McLean, who is in charge of the master plan for the whole site, works with Morgan Khan along with Lepp and Mark Davis, who are here tonight. And they are some of the leading architects in Sussex, and one of the things they bring to us, as well as a fantastic creativity and wonderful ideas, is they have a fantastic relationship with the council, which is very important for this. And then Teva, who designed Highgate Shul, and is, when you hear him speak, you'll see what I mean, very sensitive, and he's a wonderful guy to have involved in this scheme. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. Well done. Beautiful.
Thank you very much. Thanks very much, Mark. I'm another Brighton boy. I lived in the city all of my life. Morgan Khan Partnership, our firm, was founded in Hove in 1957, and I've been there for 30 years, more than 30 years. So we do know the city. We've worked on lots of major regeneration projects, such as the new Hannington's Lane behind that Hannington store. We're working on the West Street hotels, lots and lots of schools in the city. We have an excellent relationship with the officers and the councillors in the city, and we specialise really in complicated sites. This is one of the most challenging briefs that I've ever come across in my career, but I have to say it's an absolute honour and a pleasure to be involved in it. So, moving through the slides. This is just going to be a very quick snapshot of where we are at the moment to give you an update. There will be further updates. There will be a press release tomorrow about this event and inviting people to another public consultation. When we finished going through the slides, there will be some exhibition boards that we've actually turned around at the back there so that people don't take a sneak preview before we're ready. But we will turn them around, and you'll be very welcome. We'll stay as long as we need to answer any questions that you have about any details. Okay, so this is the site, just along New Church Road on the north side of the road. bounded in red there. This is an ordnance survey that shows the arrangement of the buildings, and the shul is at the back of the site. And there are 2 villas on the front that originally started life as homes. This is a topographical survey, measured survey, showing all of the features on the site. Now, as Mark, Tony and David said, what we're trying to do here is to build a real community, and that is the heart of everything. The jewel in the crown is going to be the synagogue. There will be the function space, that will be flexible, and this is where we've been working together to try to, and it has been such fun working with Teva and his expertise in the shul and these spaces. We're working really hard to make sure that we safeguard this community and to make the facilities as future-proofed as we possibly can, so they can be as flexible as possible. You'll see in a minute that it is centred around what we hope will be a really tranquil, beautiful courtyard. There'll be the cafe and the flexible office space, the kitchen, which is crucial, and the classrooms that we've been discussing with St. Christopher's. And this is a sort of bubble diagram, and it just shows the overlaps between the different functions within the synagogue. So this is the actual site, and as you can see, the concept is that the shul is the heart of the site. We have the function space, we have the office and the community life, we have the cafe and flexible spaces, the nursery, and we have the residential. The residential is essential, not only because it brings life to the site 24/7, but it also provides the enabling funding that helps, underwritten by Tony, but it provides the enabling funding to help this to get off the ground. This is a site plan that's really a landscaping plan, and so the buildings are shown white, and you can see, there are some diagrams in a minute, that as you come from the bottom of the drawing, which is New Church Road, into the centre of the site, there will be a courtyard. This is a ground floor plan that shows the arrangement of buildings and the shul right in the centre. So we have a ramp that goes down the side to an Undercroft car park. We have entrances to the flats, and we have the main entrance to the shul through the courtyard. More residential entrances, and part of the key here is that there's an awful lot going on this site, and so by separating the uses so that none of the entrances will be overstressed and over-congested, we think will be really helpful. This is the first floor, where you can see on the left the Work Avenue space in the bottom left, the classrooms behind, and the residential. And moving up through typical plans. Now this is a really, really important concept diagram, and it says everything about the scheme. So in the centre will be the main entrance off New Church Road, and it will enter into a beautiful, tranquil courtyard. The shul will be ahead of you, and it's very exciting. You'll see what Teva is planning. On the left is the Work Avenue space, on the right is the nursery, and the residential is above. But the residential entrances are on either side, so that the central entrance won't be too congested. This is a diagram, a sort of cross-section looking through the garden and the courtyard space towards the entrance to the shul right in the centre, and you can see a cross-section through the shul over to the right. This is another concept sketch that hopefully conjures up the sort of character that we're trying to create, and it should be a beautiful, tranquil landscape space. Now, one way that we are very different to the previous approach of all of the other architects. There have been 2 or 3 other attempts at this that have pretty well gone disastrously well for a number of reasons, but including with the local planning authority, is because their starting point was just to remove the internationally protected elm trees that run through the centre of the site. And we're working with them. There's no reason why we need to remove those. And so the approach is actually going to be under the boughs of these 100-year-old elms into this courtyard with a beautiful shul at the end. And this courtyard space will become an al fresco, inside, outside. Imagine a wedding or a bar mitzvah and you've got the doors open and people spilling out from one space from the inside to the outside, across to the nursery on the other side of the courtyard. It could be really stunning. This is another view just looking across that courtyard. And some idea, this isn't exactly what it would look like, but some idea of the sort of character that we're trying to achieve. And then here I'm going to hand over to Teva to concentrate on the shul itself.
Thanks, John. My name's Teva Hess, and I'd like to preface my remarks by saying what great admiration I have for what Mark is doing, and can I call you Tony? I think it's fantastic. I know it's not an easy thing to do, and my dad always told me that if it's not easy, if it's not difficult, it's not worth doing. And I really have great respect for what you're trying to do here, and I really want to contribute to that. I'd also like to say to John and his colleague Lap, who's here, and Mark and Taya, we've had the most fruitful and productive collaboration between our practices, and so it's been terrific. Yet Mark mentioned that I was the architect for Highgate Shul. Highgate's been open a year now. I should also mention that I'm a member of the same shul. And can you imagine the responsibility that rests on your shoulders? It's got to be right. It's got to be a success. That's my community. That's my group of friends. And I can say we've got an amazing rabbi there, Rabbi Liss. Since the new shul opened on the same site, membership's grown. They've got a tremendous calendar of events. The Sir Martin Gilbert Learning Center is opening. I think the date is now the 14th of November with a tremendous program. So this idea of bringing things together on one side as a center of a community is something I live, and it's something I really admire and support wholeheartedly. So now, there's only 10 slides between what I'm going to say and the highlight of the evening, which is the Chief Rabbi's address, so I'll move forward. The shul is in the center of the site. As John said, it's really the heart of the community. It's the heart of the site. And we're laying it out, although the slides I'm going to show you tonight are, it's a work in progress. And in some respects, it looks a bit more developed than it is. I know we've had great meeting with Rabbi Rader and the Rebbitzin. The layout of seats where men sit and women sit, and the Chief Rabbinate and the Beth Din will all contribute to the actual layout of the shul. So it's a work in progress. But basically, we've split it right, left, men and women, and we will try and make it halakhically correct as far as we can on the site. You'll notice there's also a mikveh on the site, also a very important ingredient to Jewish life on the site. So at its most intimate, the shul has room for about 100 seats. That seems like a lot, but those of us who go to shul occasionally, and those of us should go more often, know that people don't pack in and use every seat like tonight. Our brief is that it should be comfortable for a minyan of about 30 or 40 or 50 people. And that's really how we're approaching the project. It also has to, as you say, expand so that you've got 50 people on a normal Shabbat or maybe more. And it has to accommodate sort of 250 to 300 people. That's the brief. And that's what makes designing a shul a challenge and interesting. So we've got on the side aisles, we've got fold-down seats. So they add capacity, but they don't look empty when they're not in use, which is a feature. And then we've got this movable wall. So we've got the Aron HaKodesh on the east side, and we've got the movable wall on the west side, and you'll see how that works. So as the need arises, the movable wall will move west and expand capacity. And so we've got a shul that can grow what it needs to and yet be comfortable on a daily basis. So the other interesting part of this project is that the shul will be at the center of a very heavily developed site. It's actually going to be the smallest building on the site. It has to be very special. we've worked with John and the team so that there's no building on top of it, so it can get the primary source of light from above. There's no more beautiful light than the light that comes from above, the light from Hashem. And we will work to make this shul beautiful. We'll work to make it not stuffy. We'll make sure we have the right amount of air conditioning, the right amount of heating, so it's comfortable to be in. And as an idea, now this is very early, and it looks possibly more finished than it is, but we would like the shul to be a place of quiet reflection, prayer, of community. So we really want it to feel warm and intimate. And so we would like wood to be a primary material. We would like the light to come from above and filter down. We'd like everybody who sits there to have a great seat and to hear what's going on and participate, be in the middle of everything. And then on the outside, this hopefully, we would like to do a modern shul. And because the site is surrounded by housing and other uses, what we're looking at is putting the shul inside of a screen, which is rather delicate, which filters light, makes it more private. So we're surrounding the shul by these, right now, terracotta tiles, which give it a little privacy and a little bit of intimacy. And also, it's not another building on the site. It's not another building with doors and windows. It's special. It's pristine. And if you look at what a close-up of that facade would look like, when you have these circular tubes placed in a hexagonal pattern, you almost get the Star of David pattern. It's subtle, but that's one of the ideas. So we're trying to make the shul as pristine and precise as possible. And then at night, it will be different. It will hopefully be beautiful. We'll work very hard to make it beautiful. And yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you, John, and thank you, Teva. It's now a huge privilege for me to... The mic on? Is the mic on? Yeah, it's a huge privilege now for me to introduce the Chief Rabbi. Now, the Chief Rabbi doesn't need too much introduction, but I will say a couple of things. Number one is the reason why he's so qualified to talk about what it is to merge a shul and we kind of connect with the community is that, first of all, he became the rabbi at Western Marble Arch the year after the Western Shul and Marble Arch Shul merged. And so he is intimately experienced in merging shuls, and he's seen it in provincial communities as well. He also was the rabbi for Kinloss for many years, and there he developed an education program which has seen hundreds or possibly thousands of people reconnect to the shul as a result of that program. So the idea that we have of creating communal programming to enhance the shul and so on is something, again, that the Chief Rabbi is familiar with. But above everything, in his office, to take such an interest in this community is really inspiring for us. So, Chief Rabbi, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mark. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. And well, it's such a pleasure for me to be here this evening. And congratulations to all our previous speakers. Congratulations, Tony, on your speech and on everything you and your foundation are trying to do for the community here. And Tony, I hope you realize that you're on the record saying if you get 3 points every week, you're coming to shul 3 times a day. I'm reminded of a man who had an appointment in the West End. The meeting was to start at 4 o'clock, and he had to be there on time. To save his job, he had to be there on time. He left quite early from home, gave himself a lot of time, but the traffic was so enormous, he just couldn't find a parking place, and he was going round the block, round, and he was schwitzing. It was coming closer and closer to 4 o'clock. And eventually, out of desperation, he turned heavenwards and he said, Almighty God, if you find a parking place for me, I promise. I'll keep kosher, I'll keep Shabbos, and I'll come to shul 3 times a day. Literally just 5 seconds later, in front of him, a car pulls out from a parking spot, and it's right there for him to drive into. He looks up to the heavens, he says, God, you know what I was talking about a moment ago? Don't worry about it, I've just found a space. But if Brighton and Hove Albion really do well, we know the reason. And I remember when I paid a visit to the Bournemouth community in the summer of 2 years ago. And at that time, the community was full of so much excitement because AFC Bournemouth had just been promoted to the Premier League. And the chairman of the community got up to welcome me. And he said, Chief Rabbi, thanks to your inspiration, I think that AFC Bournemouth are going to stay in the Premier League for at least 3 seasons, autumn, winter, and spring. So my bracha to Brighton and Hove Albion is, may Almighty God bless you to be in the league for more than 3 seasons, and that's not just autumn, winter, and spring. My wife and I have really got to love Brighton. Even before we had a family connection here, we would come to visit, come with the family, have the odd holiday. It's a beautiful, majestic, wonderful town. Most of all, the people are just lovely. It's warm, it's friendly, it's welcoming. And then in the course of the years, we would pay quite a number of visits, primarily to the Holland Road Shul, which is such a beautiful building, but more importantly, what lovely people, leaders, and the community. So nice for me to see Rabbi Rader, of course, here this evening. But in particular, I want to welcome Rabbi Tebek Spitzer, of whom I've heard so many wonderful things. Thanks for everything you're doing here. Bit of a clap, ladies. And as has been said in the introduction, I pay careful attention to everything that's happening to our communities throughout the country. We have now, after 4 years in office, just about visited nearly every Orthodox community in the country. And I'm so impressed with the selflessness of people, the devotion to community life, to some simply wonderful shuls. And I have noticed what's happening within our communities, and they can be divided into 3 categories. There are those who are lucky enough to be managing success, a growing community, with an incredible challenge. Well, do we open another shul? How do we manage with so many people in shul? How lucky they are. Then you have those who are maintaining numbers, and their role is to guarantee that things will remain the same. And then you have those who are managing decline, and that's quite a challenge. But ladies and gentlemen, actually, we're not here this evening for any one of those 3. We're here for a different purpose, reversing decline. And that's music to my ears. How fortunate the Jewish community of Brighton is to be presented with an opportunity, not just to manage decline, but hopefully to reverse decline, given the fact that the overall population of the city is increasing, that this is a fantastically appealing place, not just to visit, but to live in, and its closeness to London, and the facilities that exist, and the space on the ground that you have. Thankfully, we're in a position to reverse decline and to start picking up numbers. And actually, I can give you a precedent for that. Amongst my Commonwealth role, European roles, I'm also responsible for the Jewish community of Hong Kong. And in December, my wife and I will be paying our 3rd visit to Hong Kong since I took on office. It's a marvelous community. But why is the Hong Kong community today so successful? In the 1980s, numbers were declining, and there were less than 2,000 Jews left in Hong Kong. Beautiful ancient synagogue on Robinson Road, surrounded by many skyscrapers, difficult to maintain the building, the numbers. And we know that numbers fluctuate in Hong Kong. There are many people coming in and out, a few years here, a few years there on business, but there is also a strong core of people maintaining the community. And a few businessmen got together and they thought of an idea. It was absolutely meshuggah. It was so out of the box that everybody they spoke to said, "You're crazy." But when they spoke to bank managers about it, they responded positively. And what was their idea? To get sufficient loans in order to build 2 skyscrapers on the shul grounds. And that's what they did. Today you'll visit Robinson Road Shul. You'll see those 2 skyscrapers on the shul grounds, each one 43 stories high. And thanks to the income from the rental they receive from the apartments in those buildings, the community is not only secure financially, but everything has changed. There are now 5,000 Jews in Hong Kong belonging to 6 shuls. They guess that there are an additional 5,000 who are there but who are not members of anything, but do visit shuls from time to time. The turning point came with the new development. The skyscrapers and also the bottom 5 stories of one of the buildings was allocated to a new community center. Phenomenal facilities, plus flats for the rabbis, the heads of the school, the caretaker, etc. And there was such excitement. The sense of thrill was palpable. People were proud, telling everybody in the world, "Look what's happening here. Come visit. Come stay. Come try it out." And because of that level of excitement, what previously had been a demoralized mood changed into one where people were forward-looking, grasping hold of an opportunity. I'm not here this evening to suggest that you build skyscrapers here on your shul grounds. But actually, what the Bloom Foundation is suggesting is the identical concept. It's something fresh, it's appealing, it's courageous, it's at the right time, and instead of things gradually getting lower and lower to really low ebb, you have now an opportunity to reverse decline. It is a historic opportunity. I've had 2 personal experiences with regard to shuls, one of which didn't merge, the other in a situation where it did merge. And of course, by the way, I'm totally aware of the fact that this new development of the new Church Road site is one for the entire community. And when I spoke earlier about loving Brighton, loving the Jewish community, it's the entire community. I remember 3 years ago addressing the community from this stage, in this hall, because everybody here, all Jews, all members, you're phenomenal. The commitment that you give to welfare, the support you give for the state of Israel, the interest that you have in everything Jewish, the good neshamas you have in order to be good citizens and outstanding people, it makes me immensely proud. But I hope that our progressive and reform friends will forgive me if just for a few minutes I speak about the 2 Orthodox shuls, because actually the future of the Orthodox community will make all the difference to the wider community. When I was Chief Rabbi of Ireland, there were 2 prime synagogues in the city. Adelaide Road, close to the city centre, magnificent building, my favorite building. A declining community, people didn't live that much in the area, low attendances. And then there was the Terenure community, the heart of the living Jewish community of Dublin, lots of young families. And it was obvious to everybody over decades that a merger between the 2 was the right way forward. Unfortunately, it didn't happen. And when did the merger take place? When the Adelaide Road community couldn't pay the bills for heating, for electricity, couldn't maintain a minyan, so the merger took place when the community was just about dead. So as a result, that eventual merger in a situation of weakness did provide some financial input into the merged entity, but nothing more than that. And everybody realized actually they should have merged in a situation of strength rather than leaving things to that situation of weakness. As Mark mentioned in his introduction, I was privileged to be the first rabbi of the Western Marble Arch community. Rabbi Lord Sachs had been the rabbi of Marble Arch. In 1991, he was appointed chief rabbi. And during the last year of his in office, 2 shuls merged, Marble Arch and the Western Synagogue just 1 mile away. And I therefore presided over a new merged entity. It was very exciting. And I saw how they did it. It was a model that worked. Everything worked in the favor of the members of the shul that had closed. So the Western Synagogue, which gave up their building, they had the best seats in shul. They had guaranteed 50% of members on the board, leadership of the community for a certain number of years. In so many different respects, they didn't only retain their rights were improved. They were made to feel comfortable. Stained glass windows and other appurtenances of the shul were built into the Marble Arch community. And today it is genuinely the Western Marble Arch community, and everybody is absolutely happy. So I had the good fortune to see what should have happened in Ireland actually taking place in London. And from all of my experiences, I have learned 4 important lessons. The first is, what matters most of all is minyan and not binyan. We're blessed throughout the Jewish world to have magnificent buildings. No wonder we're in love with our shul. No wonder there are people who are emotionally connected to their shul. No wonder that it's the epicenter of our Yiddishkeit. It's all good. But I must tell you, people are more important than buildings. One of the most moving experiences I had as chief rabbi was in November 2013, just 2 months after I came into office. It was an event which had been planned before. It was to consecrate the new Birmingham Central Synagogue. And actually, you were told earlier what Jeffrey Clements, the chairman of the synagogue, said. But I'll never forget the sight when I arrived to Shul on Shabbos morning. You see, what they had done was, after a merger failed with Singers Hill, just by 1 vote, as you heard, so they decided to downsize. They sold their shul and half the property it was in to a development company, and they moved into their shul hall, and within their shul hall, they created a lovely little gem of a shul, and I came to consecrate that new shul. But when I arrived, what did I see? I didn't expect to see this. You see, their beautiful historic shul was being demolished, and it was half standing, and all the rubble was on the ground. And as we walked into the new shul to consecrate it, we walked past that old shul in ruins. And I said to the members of Birmingham Central, I'm in awe being in your presence. What incredible courage you've got to be able to do what you did. But they all responded afterwards at the Kiddush and they said, no regrets. Seeing that building they were so attached to in a state of rubble, no regrets. We're at home. This is the way forward. It makes so much sense. Look at the facilities we've got. Not just a shul, but a hall and a shop and etc. Now that we've got it, we know, as painful as the decision was, it is the right way forward. So my first lesson is minyan, not binyan, people who count most of all, and not buildings. Second lesson is, as I referred to earlier, the best time for a merger is in a state of strength and not in a state of weakness. There is no value in saying, we're not against a merger, but not now. Later on, it could be possible. Effectively, what you're saying is, we want to stay in business for as long as the shul can be kept going, until there's hardly anybody left, and then eventually you can take our assets and our money. But of what value is that to a community, to the children, to the opportunity for growth, for adding a dimension of excitement to Jewish life? It's not there. So therefore, the fact that over Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, you'll see lots of people, and people will be wondering themselves, wow, so many people in the shul, why is anybody talking about a merger? The fact that there is strength is the reason why you must make a merger now. Because that will provide for a great future, particularly bearing in mind the reality of the statistics that have been presented to you, which brings me to my third point. My third point is, if you're making a decision about whether to merge or not, don't think about today. Think about 10 to 20 years' time. Because the decision you're taking is not for today. It's for the future. Mark's last words in his presentation were, this is a historic opportunity never to be repeated, and he's right. Yes, technically, perhaps in the future, there could be a possibility for a merger, but merging at this time in this way to create a new future and the right kind of atmosphere for Brighton Jury, you're not going to get it again. Think, therefore, What's going to happen in 10 years' time? What will our numbers be? What will our strength be? What will our age profile be? How many kids will there be here for? Why are we doing this all? And think about the broader interests of the entire community's future. And the fourth lesson I've learned is, don't allow personalities to get in the way of what is logical and reasonable. Don't think, oh, so-and-so is of a certain view, is doing so much good work, we have to listen to them. Or so-and-so is in a certain position, so what position will that person have in the event that such and such happens? These are temporal matters. They're matters for now. Don't allow considerations about rabbis to get in the way. Don't allow considerations about your chief rabbi to get in the way. I don't want anybody to listen to me because I'm the chief rabbi, and therefore you should listen. If there is any value in what I'm saying, it should be because I'm speaking logic, I'm speaking sense. That's what should determine the path that you take. And with regard to rabbis, it is my strong recommendation that if a merger takes place in this city, that you keep your rabbis. You do what happened in Redbridge United Shul only 3 years ago, when Newbury Park and the Redbridge community joined together to produce Redbridge United. Sounds a bit like a football team, but anyway, it's a shul. And Rabbi Wilson, Reverend Newman, the two of them became joint ministers of the community. That is what I would recommend to you. You've got wonderful rabbis. Keep them, utilize them. In fact, by pooling resources together, you will have the financial ability to have more than one rabbi, to have outstanding resources. That's what you need to make your decision on. Not personalities, but what's the best thing for the future, for the wider community, what is in its interest. You might be thinking, why am I here? When I heard about this development, I did take a keen interest, bearing in mind what I've seen around the country and around the world, and I asked to come. That's because I believe that in my role as chief rabbi, it is not my role to win a popularity contest. I'm not here to make everybody love me and adore me all the time. It would be nice, but that's not what I'm in my position for. The Almighty has given me a position through which I believe that my role is hopefully to inspire, to provide guidance and direction for the future of Judaism in this country. And that's why I'm willing to raise my head above the parapet. And that's why I'm here to tell you what I think. You can accept it, you can reject it. Please just use whatever logic and reason you have in your heads, doing the responsible thing. At the end of the day, it's not what I say that counts, it's your vote. And I'm pretty certain that when the two synagogue members' bodies vote, because it's the members who need to express their opinions, when that happens, you will decide together, with each vote counting from the membership, as to what the right future will be. So that's the message that I want to give you. I want to congratulate those who have thought of this most original, creative, courageous, and wonderful plan. You've got amazing partnerships. You've got a recipe for certain success. I like the fact that it's for the broader community, for all of Brighton Jews to come together through a facility while maintaining the Orthodox ethos of the site. It's a great model, and I applaud you for the thought and for the intentions. In the course of the next few months, it will really be over to the membership of the shuls. And in whatever you decide, I'll be with you in your final decision. May God bless you all. Thank you.
Chief Rabbi, what a huge privilege we've all had to hear your words of wisdom tonight. Thank you so much. We've now got about half an hour or so for Q&A. I will say we're not taking any questions on Brighton Hove Albion Football Club. I will also say that for detailed questions about the plans, The architects are going to stay behind after tonight is concluded, next to the boards, and you'll be able to ask them detailed questions. So with those caveats, please feel free to raise your hands.
My name is Rabbi Charles Wallach. Can you hear me?
No, sorry, I should have said Rabbi Wallach, sorry. There are roving mics, so please speak into the mic and...
Okay. Yes. Those who know me know that I've been part of this community on and off for the last 40 years, and much of what was said earlier I concur with. I want to raise one issue. There was one group that wasn't spoken of in this discussion, and that was the situation in Kemptown. We have there the Hyman Fine House, which in 1973, I believe, was created by this community. It's still there, although for many it could be on the moon, because those 3 or 4 miles between here and there seems to be a very far distance. Not only that, but especially on Shabbat and Yom Tov, those who do not do not travel on Shabbat certainly couldn't get there. And my hope and prayer is, I was looking at this whole discussion, this residential area which you have in mind. Think about whether it's possible to incorporate something along the lines of an old people's home or a sheltered accommodation or something like that. I say it has a mutual advantage. You just heard the reaction. Additionally, and I've seen this, I've also been around the world, and I've seen different communities reacting, particularly with questions of kashrut. The use of a kosher facility, which could be used all the time, not only as and when, but could be used for the people and with the people, who I think would be mutually supportive and mutually helpful. And one final remark, going back to the chief rabbi, you'll have a minyan every week.
Rabbi Wallach, thank you very much for your comments. Just a few things to say. The first is that Neil Taylor is in the room. Where's Neil? Where's Neil? Well, one second, I'm just trying to respond to the previous question. Neil, where's Neil? Oh, Neil is in the other room, okay. So Neil is one of the senior people at Jewish Care, and the Bloom Foundation works quite closely with Neil on the Hyman Fine site to try and improve the facilities there, and we are very, very much in favor of trying to improve Hyman Fine's house. In fact, at one point we did consider whether your idea of having the home, a different type of home, but a home nevertheless for elderly people on the site might make sense, and we looked at it. The honest truth is that if we're going to revitalize the community, you have to bring young blood in, and you have to have residential space and congregation, community facilities which will attract young people. And so, whilst we looked at that, we felt that there was a better option. We are still, if the opportunity arises in the future to have a new central site for Hyman Fine, then we would certainly consider that in the future. Thank you.
My question was, how does Raleigh Hall
use the
fit into this proposal?
Could you just use the microphone, please? Thank you.
How does Raleigh Hall fit into this proposal, if at all?
You already said that. That's right. The answer is that Raleigh Hall, I think, serves a fantastic purpose for the community. I mean, Roger's been incredibly helpful in allowing us to put this evening on together. And this hall is outstanding. We won't have anything like that on our site. So I think Raleigh Hall will continue and serves a great purpose for the Jewish community. And also, I think, has a lot of other non-Jewish events on site which generate an income. So, our focus is, we can't do everything at once. Our focus is very much on Holland Road and trying to create a unifying communal site for Brighton Hove Jewry. There's Simon.
Good evening, Simon Seligman. My family have been members of Holland Road Shul for 50 years. However hard it is for me to say so, I am very pro-amalgamation. I feel now is the right time. I'm very disappointed that the chair of Holland Road Shul isn't here this evening. I think it is a very poor... Okay, I'm just... Okay, I don't want an argument. I just thought I'd bring that up. My question to the Bloom Foundation is, if the board of Holland Road Shul decide not to amalgamate, will this scheme still go ahead?
Thank you. First of all, just to say, Stanley and Michelle are very sorry they couldn't be here. They had pre-planned to be away, so just to clear that. And we, you know, but Stanley, we've talked to Stanley. We want to be on good terms with Stanley. You know, he's entitled to his view, and the board is. But you know, our overall perspective is that it's the congregation, as you rightly said, that should make the decision. Yeah, the answer to your question is simply yes. The scheme is going to go ahead anyway. There's nothing which will change. I mean, maybe it'll be improved a little bit. If Holland Road comes on board, they will have a central part in the design of some of the scheme. And that's why coming now means that we can take a lot of the key remnants which will remind us of what it is, the connections with Holland Road. I mean, my father, the last 6 years of his life was at Holland Road. And so for me, it would be a massive thing to be able to take some of those connections to the new site. I mean, this Shabbos was Kalman Fausner's yacht site. I mean, Kalman was... he taught me my bar mitzvah, taught Tony his bar mitzvah. He taught Simon, taught you your bar mitzvah. I mean, he was Holland Road for decades and decades. And if we could preserve his memory by bringing some of the pictures of him and some of the Torah scrolls which he read from, etc., that to me would be amazing, rather than just seeing the building go into a state of disrepair. Next question. Thank you. Doris.
Slightly different question. It's to do with the mikveh. You're building a big community for the whole community, but is the mikveh for the whole community or only for the Orthodox community?
I think that the key principle here, which the rabbi outlined, is that the site's an Orthodox site, and so it has to be halakhically Orthodox. So as long as that's the case, I think all other decisions will come off of that, and the same is true for the mikveh. So my sense is that it'll be for the Orthodox community. For everybody, okay, so there you go. That's a better answer than I could have given. So it's for everybody. Thank you.
I think on paper it seems a marvellous development, but we should not be in the business of closing shuls down. But you're talking about Holland Road. There's been talk of amalgamation for 30 or 40 years now. Now, why should Holland Road disappear to join up with Brighton and Hove Hebrew Congregation? Because this is a get-out-of-prison card for them. This development is very favourable for Brighton and Hove Hebrew Congregation. But Holland Road has a fine shul. We've got a lovely rabbi now and a board of management that doesn't need to keep selling off the family assets. The biggest asset that Brighton and Hove Hebrew Congregation has, they're going to lose. Now, okay, if you want to go ahead with this development, get on with it, do it, but leave Holland Road out of the equation.
Thank you. Thank you for your view. Thank you for your view. We agree with you that Rabbi Spitzer is an excellent rabbi and is bringing an enormous amount to Holland Road services. I think the thing that I wouldn't agree with you on is, Holland Road has been a beautiful shul for many decades, and that hasn't reversed the trend. As the chief rabbi said, you need to be daring, you need to be bold, you need to be radical, you need to change things to make a difference, to reverse the decline. And the thing that New Church Road has is a big site in a wonderful location in Central Hove. And so that brings opportunities for all the communal development that we talked about, which will enhance the shul, which you wouldn't have in a standalone shul. So as difficult as the decision would be, we believe it's the right one. Holland Road Shul would not have to close overnight. You know, the joint board could decide over a number of years what should happen. Ultimately, if we're successful, Holland Road might have another communal use, perhaps be a free school in the future. So there's nothing that radically needs to happen at Holland Road. This is about people. It's about bringing the communities together and using the asset, which is a massive site in the centre of Hove, to create assets which the community couldn't otherwise have. You have a follow-up.
The other problem is, you said before about age of members. Now, we have a lot of old members in Holland Road. Well, I'm not going to schlep all the way to New Church Road.
Yes.
So we should not be in the business of closing shops down when you still have people coming. We still have people. We can operate very well in Holland Road.
Okay. I think we'll move on to. Listen, you're entitled to your view. You're entitled to your view. I think we've kind of been over the answers to that question already. So, next question. Yes, please, Jackie.
Me.
There's a lady. Oh, sorry, Gail. Okay, go ahead. Sorry.
Is it? Yeah, okay. Hello, my name's Gail Branch. My family were Holland Road members, as yours is, Mark, and obviously Tony. There is a couple of things that I'm interested in answers to. Firstly, the flats to be sold. We can't specify that they're only going to be sold to Jewish people or sublet to non-Jewish people. Therefore, there is a security risk. Obviously, if you're going to have a shul on site, that's the first thing. Also, renting out classrooms to St Christopher's, because it's going to be on high holy days and that sort of thing. How are you going to broach that with the school and also renting office space? And also, in terms of selling off the family silver with Holland Road, they're actually selling off their car park next door to fund a development on that site. So no one's really having it off in terms of finances. As a business model, there are certain aspects of Holland Road that I think we can take away with, because they are actually working very well in a lot of areas. And jokes aside, in terms of age and everything else, I think it's quite important that we work together as a community rather than make fun of each other. So I think you're doing a very good job. Thank you.
That's good. Well said. Thank you. In terms of the residential accommodation, it would be open to the broad community. We hope, because it will be in a Jewish community and an Orthodox shul will be on site, that there will be a big enticement for Jewish people to buy some of those units. And in fact, we'll be marketing quite hard through the Jewish press to try and encourage that. The other question you asked about St Christopher's, we'll have a very professional long-term leasehold agreement with St Christopher's if the commercial terms are right. And baked into that will be dates for the high holidays, which we will tell them that they are unable to use their site on those days, unfortunately. So I think we can cover that off.
How are you going to call people up to the law, to read from the Torah, if they're not necessarily classified as an Orthodox Jew, that sort of thing? Are they going to be able to be bar mitzvahs because it's going to cause problems?
There was one other question I forgot to answer. You asked about security, and thank you for asking that. We actually, this afternoon, we had a 2-hour meeting with Lance Ettinger of the CST. Lance is an ex-Brighton boy known all my life, so it's great to have you involved in the project. And Lance went through a lot of the potential vulnerabilities, and we are going to find a way to mitigate as best we can all the vulnerabilities, and certain things we may not be able to do. But we are absolutely going, before we get to the stage of making a proposal to the council, we will have heard everything the CST has said, and we will take everything they say on board. So the security side is incredibly important to us. On your last question, I mean, it'll be an Orthodox service, an Orthodox minyan, you know, and the Rabbonim and the chairman of the shul will decide who gets called up. So I don't think that's an issue. Next, yeah.
Okay. Oh, hello, I'm Karen from Brighton and Hove Progressive Synagogue. Will the community aspects of the development be run by a different legal entity from the shul side of the development? or will the shul be running the community side under their auspices?
Yeah. Listen, I think a lot of decisions around corporate structure and governance are yet to be taken. The key thing from our perspective is that there's a wide representation of both the religious and non-religious community to oversee, so we can get representation of what different parts of the community want to have in terms of events, education, and so on and so on. And we can therefore get the most creativity and the most representation to inform that programming. The kind of legal side of things, I think, is less important, but we will have to get to it at some point.
Hi, David Scheingold. It's really reassuring that we've been invited to a consultation meeting where nothing is yet set in stone. The initial plans have been shown. And it's also reassuring that we're building a number of resources that are going to benefit a strong community. My concern is that at the present time, we don't have a strong community. We have two Orthodox communities. And as somebody said, they've been talking for 40 years about merging. Now, the Chief Rabbi has said in his Rosh Hashanah message, he's talked about unity within the community. And tonight he has said that buildings in themselves do not make a community. So for me, the bit that's missing is how do we build a strong community first? Because if we put the cart before the horse, then whatever intentions you have for this development, it's going to be very hard to implement that. So I would like to suggest, firstly, 40 years is quite significant because, if I remember rightly from the Torah, and I don't normally quote from the Torah, but given that the Chief Rabbi is here, I think somebody should. The Jews wandered for 40 years. They were 12 tribes, and during that 40 years, they became unified. They moved into the land of Israel, and eventually that unification resulted in them building the temple. And the temple was a magnificent building that was the center of the Jewish community for many, many, many years. And even today, there are still parts of the temple that remain. So if you have a strong community building a strong development, then that's going to last for generations, and I do hope it does. The Borehamwood Nelstree congregation, a couple of years ago, they had to decide how they were going to bring their communities together. They produced a consultation document, 35-page consultation document. I'm not going to go through it at all, but what it talks about is how to bring the community together. And there are some really good ideas about doing that. And finally, what I would suggest is that under the stewardship of the Bloom Foundation, that you convene a working group. You have 3 people nominated by the chairman of the Brighton and Hove congregation. You have 3 people nominated by the Hove Hebrew congregation. Those people do not need to be, and probably shouldn't be, board members. And at least one of each 3 should be a woman. And they should get together and in 3 months produce a consultation paper about how we're going to bring the community together. And at that point, if you bring the community together and then involve the building work and the community, I think that stands a much better chance of unifying this community. It deserves to be unified.
Thank you. I mean, you've made some great points. I mean, the biggest point you made, I think, was that we need to unify as a community And first, and second, think about the buildings, and I couldn't agree with you more. And a lot of our presentation was really centered on creating the mechanisms which will bring the whole community together to talk about looking at the community center, getting representation, and unifying the two Orthodox schools. We think that the time has come to take a stand and actually to move forward with this proposal. And because of the history of failed mergers, we think you need to take that step. But absolutely, the community needs to unify as well.
Hey, Mark. So, my name's Lawrence Alexander. Some of you know me, some of you don't. I'm also a member of Holland Road. Like Simon in the 50 Club, we're really worried about our kids and our grandchildren. For me, there are great examples of Brighton Hove community getting together. If you take the Shabbaton, you take the CST, you take things like Sussex Friends of Israel. So there are compelling reasons where this community does come together and unite. We cannot change the past. We can only change the future. And I think that if as a community we don't change the future now, we're dead.
I agree. Okay, I think we have room for two more. And please.
Hi. Well, we moved here about 2 years ago, so I want to say that's actually it's a great thing to see this vision and clearly this sense of kind of dynamism which is being introduced. So we're really positive about that. I was just wondering, in terms of attracting, I think one of the big aspects of your model is attracting young people, young families, and from conversations with friends of mine, a big deterrent. I think one of the big reasons people leave Northwest London or dislodged is for financial reasons. So they kind of go further and further afield so they can afford it. One of the problems with coming somewhere like Brighton and Hove, as great as it is that financially it's pretty expensive. Property is not significantly cheaper. So I was wondering, are there any kind of specific incentives, as I've seen possibly when I lived in Manchester, in Whitefield, that they kind of had incentives for younger families to come. Are there going to be anything like that to try and get a specific age range, demographic, and focus on them? Or is it just going to be more in the sense of hoping that this will attract them? Or is there more specific initiatives planned for that?
That's a great question. So just one stat. The number of people who moved away from London last year was at an all-time high. It was almost 300,000 people. So there is clear evidence of people moving because of house prices. We are hoping when the dust settles that Brighton Hove Hebrew congregation will have a very, very healthy income stream. We will talk with David, and David I know has got supportive views. Rabbi Rader actually mentioned the same thing that you've just mentioned. And there may be a way that in the future we can subsidize and help people. At the moment, it's too early to give that commitment because the development itself is not going to be easy from a financial perspective. But if there is an opportunity in the future, I totally agree with you. That's something we need to consider.
Mark, I don't actually have a question, but I would really like to make a comment. As you know, Michael Harris, I'm joint chair of the Reformed Synagogue in Brighton and Hove. My comment is, I'm slightly jealous. I think all your ideas are absolutely fabulous. I have said on many occasions in my shul, we never change anything because people hate change, but we do innovate. And that's exactly what you're doing. Anything we can do to help you, we're very willing to do, and we would very much like to have discussions with you so that we can take advantage of what you're doing for the community here. Thank you.
Thank you. We have time. We have time for one more question because the man is wearing a Brighton Hove Albion hat. I will take that.
My name's Alan Lever. I belong to BHHC proudly. I'm a regular Meningo, etc., etc. The one important thing you haven't mentioned, exactly the same as our Sunday get-together, was the time factor. You're already on the move. You've already got the plans kind of progressing. You've already approached the local authorities. Please give the audience here an idea of when you think the whole thing to be starting and when it will be complete. And up the Albion.
Okay, thank you. The plan and the hope is that we will get a decision ultimately from the council sometime around Pesach, maybe slightly later. We will start some works over the summer, and then the community would move off-site after the Hagim next year, and then it will probably be around a 2-year build. So maybe summer 2020 is when we would hope to be on site. Please God, please God, please God. Ladies and gentlemen, I omitted to say a couple of things earlier in the evening. One is that you should have on your seats a flyer advertising an upcoming event with Mark Regev, the Israeli ambassador, who's coming to Brighton. What date? The 26th of September. So that is he is a great speaker, so that will be an amazing thing. Also, please do fill in your surveys. If you have any other questions that were not answered, you will see an email address. You can send us an email asking those questions. There are also question cards you can leave here. But as I say, this is a consultation process, so we really do want to hear your views. And thank you again very much for coming.